Hello everyone, this is Omni. Welcome to episode 3 of Collecting Opinions. On today's episode, we'll be talking about a very common item in board games and tabletop. One of the original algorithms, I guess you can kind of say. Dice. Dice, these things. These little things. I have with me guest host, or co-host. I don't know how I'm going to introduce other hosts that way. But it's Danik Rose.
Hey everybody! Hi. How you doing?
Danik, you are quite well versed. If you're seeing two screens, that is Danik. Danik's on the left. I'm on the right. So hello on the right.
Hey.
And then Danik has quite the experience with dice, actually. You are a D&D GM. Actually, I'm gonna let you go ahead and say your introduction. Actually.
Sure, no problem. Hi. No, thanks for the intro, Omni. And so I'm Danik. I'm Danik Rose online, and I have been playing D&D off and on for probably a long time now. It's been over 20 years for sure. Over 20 years been playing D&D off and on. And
so playing since birth.
Since before I was born, because I have an interesting story about that I'll save for later, but yeah, totally. Yeah, hi everybody. And I'm excited to be here.
So for those that don't know, what dice are these little what would you call them? 3D objects?
Yeah, they are probably one of the oldest means of just sort of probably one of the oldest tools used for entertainment and non-entertainment purposes, for that matter, out there. Probably it's kind of be harder pressed to find something that's older than dice in terms of using it for entertainment or tools.
And
that has. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was saying they're used in many different ways, from simple educational games to all the way up to gambling, where you lose all your money.
Yeah, or more, right? Possibly even more, right?
Yeah, and so dice will have typically they can have as little as 2 faces, right? And that's people would go, that's a coin, that's not a dice. But technically, as I'm showing you this D2. Do you have a D2, Danik?
I don't have one in this collection, but I have something else that will be interesting later.
So we have so it all has to so isn't there such thing as a D1, isn't there? Isn't someone make like a D1 or something?
Well, I guess it's sort of I guess you could in theory, right?
Okay. We're gonna skip the meme of D1, because D1 is technically it's not a true dice because it didn't do anything. But you can be as small as a D2, which is, most people say it's a coin, but really it's not really, because coins denote currency, and these are not currency. And
for sure.
Any shape. This could be a triangle that's 2-sided, all the way up to, I don't have 100-sided dice, but the most common polyhedral is that goes out as high as 20 is what I have. D20. Now, full set, I believe, and Danik, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's a D3, right? D3 or D4. Sorry,
Yep.
D4, and then a D8. Oh no, D6. Sorry, D6.
Yeah, no, I can actually pull out.
Yeah, you're a little bit more tidier than I am. So maybe we're gonna pull out the dice set and show people what a quote unquote standard dice set is when you purchase them.
For sure. So this is interesting because the colors here I'm specifically picking out because there is for those who are into D&D and related, they may some of them may recognize why I am pulling these specific ones out. I am missing a couple here. Which color are they? It was blue, so...
You might need to zoom in a little bit for the video.
Sure, of course.
With the set, when you get the
Yep.
set out.
Yes, I will get it out here. But there is, yes, it is a set of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it is... this isn't the original color, but that's okay. I just want to show you. But yeah, these are the ones that you would typically get if you were ever to join, like, play D&D, right? You would get a set of these. So I will hold them up so that people can see.
There you go, that works. So yeah, see, there are 7. That is D4, D6, D8, D12. Oh, sorry, D10, D12, and then D20.
Well, there's two D10s.
Oh, right. I'm like, I knew something was doubled. And so this is that's what when you purchase a dice set.
Mm-hmm.
That is what is considered a dice set. I think not a lot of games outside of D&D use that full set. Is that correct?
That is correct. D&D was actually one of the reasons why they were able to enforce a copyright, was the fact that they were one of the few out there that used non-standard dice.
Interesting. I didn't actually know that. I did not know they copyrighted the dice.
Well, sort of, yeah. They copyrighted a system. I don't know all the details, and so someone will probably will write in the comments saying, like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, it's part of it has to do with using a D20 for gaming. And there's some kind of relationship, either like a patent or something. Initially, the patent portion is expired, but it was one of the ways that they were able to enforce, trademark or copyright or some kind of restrictions, because D&D was the only one allowed to use a D20 for certain gaming purposes. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting to me that is something that occurred. Now, what was I going to point out? Yeah, dice. So the dice come in like we were just saying. The dice set comes in 7, but they all have numbers on them in the set. But just like the D2. Yeah. There are some dice that don't have numbers. I don't remember the game. You'll know what game it is, but it's a tabletop. But this dice, you might look familiar. To some of you, they can see the video. It's got a plus and a minus and a blank spot.
Oh, nice. Yep. So that's basically to me, it looks like maybe it's a D3.
Kind of. I think it has 2. Okay, so it's a D6. But it is a D3 common denominator dice because it has 2 pluses, 2 minuses, and 2 blank spots.
Yep, so that'd be a D3 then. That would be the equivalent of a D3.
It's a probability dice in that sense as well, because there's a couple of different. It's a D6. It's a D6 in shape, but it is a D3 in theory. But the fact that it's a D6 shape, there's twice the chance of getting one of those options. Do you know what the game is? I'm trying to think. I think it's Dungeon World that uses these dice. Well, maybe.
Was it? I don't know which one, but was it?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Was it one of one of those cyberpunk ones?
Actually, I can pull this up on the internet. I think the game I was using it for, it was a little game called Fiasco. I think that
nice.
might have been Fiasco Dice. Fiasco Dice. No, that didn't help me at all. That also Come on. Where's this dice from?
Where is this dice from? That should be a Google thing.
You get this a lot. You get this a lot when you start collecting dice. You get weird dice that you're like, I don't know where this is from. Oh my god. Okay, Google. While I'm looking that up though.
Yeah.
I guess what got you into collecting dice? Is this the D&D aspect or?
Yeah, a lot of it was the D&D aspect, but it was a couple of things. This kind of maybe is a good segue into part of what I meant before I was born. Yeah, so I found out relatively young in life that my father actually was was an avid enthusiast of D&D in the very, very, very beginnings, to the point where now today I actually do have a copy of the very first published rules for Dungeons and Dragons back from 1970s, and it's in great condition, unbelievable condition. And I've always had this sort of fascination with dice, and there's something interesting here that I wanted to show you. I don't know if this would make the most sense for it or not, but have you ever heard of a D5?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so this idea of chance and probability has definitely been something that my family has been sort of ingrained in them for a long time, and I think this is where it probably rubbed off on me, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And have you ever heard of a game called? It's a Korean game.
Okay.
They use what's effectively a D5. And I saw this growing up, and I didn't realize it, but this sort of was one of the things.
I should probably segue here for the audience.
Yes.
By the way, so how dice are named? Dice are named by the number of sides, or number of outcomes they have, which is why when we were talking about the fate dice, I found out the name. I looked up.
Oh, nice.
It's
okay.
fate dice, or fudge dice. But fate dice have only three results. So in theory, or in practice, it is a D3, but it has 6 sides, so D6 for each side. So that's how the naming of the dice are. And I know someone's gonna make D jokes. Anyway,
but of course.
So D5 means it's a dice for whatever weird reason. I'm gonna. What's a D6 and a D8? Here, how different they are. So this is a D8, right? And then this is a D6. So they're very even. Like they have a shape that the sides are in, and then you're able to do that. So a D5 is quite interesting because I don't know what the heck shape that looks like. Because I don't even know if you can evenly make that a shape. Because the D4 is pushing it. It's a pyramid. It's pushing it. So, so go on. Please explain further the D5 and this game that uses it. Danik.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Sorry.
No
and
worries.
yep.
I had to make sure we didn't get disconnected.
No, you're good, and that's my bad. So yeah, you're right. D whatever is what the terminology we use, and the most, like you said, most people when they think of dice, they think of regular polyhedrons. These things, that have the same shape, just a bunch of them together, right? So and to make dice, well. That's not the only form that they can take. And what I was going to show you was these. I don't know if you've ever seen these before.
Oh my god.
Have you ever seen these before?
No.
They don't look like dice, right? At all.
For those that don't see the video, I'm going to explain what I'm seeing, and then I'll have Danik go ahead and explain what these are. But
Sure.
They look like rods with Korean letters, or not the Korean letters. Sorry,
they're Chinese letters, actually.
Chinese
these ones.
letters. I just
Yeah.
You said Korean game, and I said
Yeah.
but they're Chinese characters and they're just rods with Chinese characters. They're just so they don't look anything like dice. So, but like I said, I will let Dana continue to explain how these connect.
Sure. Yeah, and because one of the purposes of dice is to determine random numbers, right? And so, obviously, dice, one of the thing about them is that they all have an equal probability of a single face coming up, generally speaking. So we like that, right? But that isn't the only way to do it. So this is actually part of a Korean game. It's a traditional game called Yut. And it's 4 sticks, and the sticks have a shape, a very distinct shape. It's not circular. It is almost circular with one side of it shaved flat. So it's like 80% circle, 20% flat side. Right? And when the flat side is down, it means the rounded part is up, and usually these will have any number of markings. These particular ones happen to have Chinese characters on them, but they don't have to, and traditionally it's any kind of marking. It could be as simple as an X on it, right? And so there's 4 of them, and they all have the same shape. And this part of a board game, that traditional board game, it's almost like a type of backgammon type game, but it's very common for parties and families to play because it's done in teams. I have a board too as well to display an example, but it's played on a board like this, where you have to go around the entire board from start to finish, and they have little markers, but there's no limit on the number of players because everyone plays as a team between 2 teams. So the way you roll the dice, so to speak, is you use these sticks. And it's going to be a little noisy, but I'll just give you an example of what it would look like. So you toss it like this. And in this particular situation, we have 3 of the sticks are curved side down with the flat shaved portion up, and 1 stick has the flat portion down with the writing. So in this particular scenario, this value is 3. So in the game, they would move 3 places. Okay, sure, but how is this a D5? Well, it's actually pretty interesting how they do it. So since we're on camera, I will show some of it. If all flat sides are up, this is a 4.
Okay.
But if all the flat sides are down, so 4 flat sides down, no flat sides up, and only markings are visible, this is actually a 5.
Okay.
And so it's the count, the way you count is however many flat sides are up is how many spaces you move. But if no flat sides are up, that's a 5. So in the sense, it's actually like a D5. But
okay, right, because of the way that you can play 4 sticks, they can be the 4 results, and then they can be blank, and then not blank, right? So that makes 2 plus each. So those that don't understand, the sticks have markings on them, as I said, they're Chinese characters. So when one has the characters and then none of them have the characters, that moves through the four sticks in regards to the position, and so then you get a 5th, so to speak, result, because you can either have no characters or all characters. So that's an interesting. That's an interesting way to make a D5.
Yeah, and it's different as well because it is, and this is the fact of whenever you use multiple dice as well. One of the differences, of course, is that when you use multiple dice, or in this case sticks, the probabilities change. Obviously, the probability of getting a 5 or a 4 are pretty low because all the sticks have to be one way. But there's a lot more combinations of getting 2 or 3. So getting 2s or 3s are a lot more common than getting 4s or 5s. So it's in the strictest sense, it is not a D5, but it does the job, and you only need a few sticks to do it. So And this is how is this connected to me and my dice collecting is because my family, I didn't realize it at the time, but when we would have big family gatherings with my mother's side of the family, they would play this, and I remember times when it was incredibly loud, energetic, and just huge amount of excitement over these sticks being tossed around, and I didn't really know at the time. But as I grew up and older, I learned about it, and it piqued my interest, and it sort of helped get me more interested in dice as I got older. But yeah, this is a little probably something most people didn't really think about when they think of dice.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. But going back to traditional dice, as we were talking about, they come in. Usually they'll come in a set, or you can get them as individual dice. Sometimes people will sell them in a bundle of just a box of dice. Now, the dice can be made out of many different materials. And I'll talk about this particular type of dice in a second. I'm just using this as an example. It can be used in many different materials, but this is particularly common. Most common is resin. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely the most flexible.
Okay. But you can make it out of wood. I've seen wood dice. There's also precious gems dice and metal dice. Metal dice, you'll have to be very careful. They look cool, but they can shatter things. So they can cause damage. I mean, these dice too. These are like cancers basically. If you just leave them on the floor or something, or you throw them. There we go. Danik has some metal dice. There we go. So you can see it is different material, and that material also will change the weight, distribution as well, and things like that. So it will change the probability. Now, I have here this red dice that I pulled out, which I have a set of, and everything. The reason I pulled this out is that there are also other methods of creating that probability, of kind of making it as fair as possible. What was it? One of these dice, by the way, has a defect, and I have a couple of people that will, because of the way these dice are supposed to be made, the defected dice, they say that it's cheating, and they do not allow that dice in play. I think it's the D6. I think it's like there's like a extra piece on the 8. But these are supposed to be perfect probability dice, so to speak. Perfectly random, because they're sculpted and molded in a way. Oh no, it is the D20. It's the D20, and it's on a 7. So I don't know how that would help me. That's really cheating. But anyway, but you can also shape the dice so that it always, it's completely random on where it's gonna fall. So with that being said, I will ask the question to you, Danik. What are your thoughts on banning particular dice because of probabilities?
So that is a great question, actually, because as you were speaking, it reminded me of these two die and the differences between them. For those of you who cannot see, these are both D20 or 20-sided die. However, they are fundamentally different in how they are arranged. How so? So this is an orange die, and this is a typical D&D die that you will find in most sets and whatnot. This is what you will typically find when you are looking for dice. And this particular one, what makes it a standard die is that any standard die is going to have a very important property where the opposite faces will always add up to the same number. So if you lay it flat, the number on the top that you see plus the number on the bottom that you cannot see will always add up to the same number, regardless of the die. So that's a property of just die, of any typical die. So in a D20's case, they always add up to 21. So in this case, if you look at 7, opposite 7 is going to be 14. So they add up to be 21. That's typical. Now, this particular die is actually banned in some places, even though it is a D20 and it is perfectly weighted. But why? Because this is what's called a spin down die. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but this marking here is a special mark. It means 20. But this does not have that property where opposite sides add up to 21. This is used for tracking and keeping track of values as opposed to being rolled. So you start out with 20 at the top, and then every number, the next number down, is always next to it. So 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. So this is a way to easily keep track of things like hit points or damage.
Right. I was definitely going to interject that dice also can be used as counters. This is very kind of old school type of thing, and all that. So that's what Danik means when he's talking about counting down for like hit points and things like that. So continue.
So the idea that dice are unfair or there's biases in them. Yeah, of course it is, and there are times when I've seen seemingly innocuous dice being used, and find out later that they actually were not approved for XYZ or something like that. One example of it is, and for that reason I don't use it other than in casual play, is a dice like this, which is 2d6s but in one single die.
Oh, the infamous double six.
Yes. So this one, is an example where, because the weight of the inside die can change and things like that, people will sometimes complain that this is not truly random. But if you do get on a topic of randomness in dice, I have a very interesting anecdote that I encountered with this years ago with a actual national level professional backgammon player. They were not professional for the U.S. team. They were in the U.S. for a summer, and I was working in the university.
Oh, okay.
I was working at a camp down in California, a technology computer camp, but in the dormitories where we were staying, there happened to be a lady. I believe she was somewhere from Eastern Europe. I believe it was Slovakia, but I can't remember. It's been years ago. And she was an honest-to-goodness professional backgammon player for the Slovakian national team.
Interesting.
And the reason why I found out about her was because it was a technology camp, and she heard about it, and she needed some stable internet. At the time, this was years ago, it was a little bit harder to get stable, fast internet, and she needed it because she was actually scheduled to play some international tournaments for backgammon. There were exhibition matches, but it was fascinating to see because she brought up a very interesting point. And she said, we're playing this online, and so all of the dice rolls are done by computer.
The infamous argument between a digital and physical algorithm.
Yeah, she mentioned in her circle, the discussion often, it was often a discussion about the fact that the online digital die, the general legend, if you so to speak, the superstition is that the dice always seemed to, in her words, go against the person in the lead. So it was, whoever was ahead, it always seemed like just as didn't matter if it was her or someone else, or the opponent. The feeling at the time, at that level of play, at that moment in time, was that these digital random die, which in theory were truly random, they couldn't shake that feeling that the dice were fighting for the underdog, so to speak.
I will probably talk about this in a video game collecting opinions episode, but just as a aside, by the way, for those listening, that is the equivalent. That is what we call in the video game world rubber banding, which is the computer, the programming does not allow you to get too far into the lead. because then it would be a little too easy, and so you're rubber banding. So you'll notice that the racers are getting faster or they get slower depending on where you are on the track, or the position. So
Yeah, the Mario Kart blue shell, right?
yeah. So it sounds like that the dice really was trying to make the algorithm was trying to make it fair rather than random.
Now, to be fair, this was just anecdotal. I mean,
right, of course.
at the time, believe it or not, the number one site for online backgammon was, rest in peace, was MSN Gaming.
Oh my god.
Yes, that tells you a bit how far back in time we're going here. But yes, so MSN Gaming. So it was run by Microsoft, the gaming. So there's a reasonable expectation that the dice truly were random. However, that doesn't change the human factor, and everybody, playing a game, especially at the time, was human. So it's hard to divorce yourself from that emotional tie to the outcome. Yeah. Yeah.
For those that don't know, MSN Gaming was run by the Egyptians. No, I'm kidding. It's
This
old,
I
but
did
it's
not know.
It's old, but it's not that old. I
Yeah.
like that little joke. That's really interesting about computer dice, because everyone always is like, oh, just use the computer dice, and I'm like, I don't know. I use computer dice in my normal online streaming games, but only because it's a little harder. It's a little harder. It was harder to pull this out. I had to actually pull out my dice, but I might change that moving forward now that I know where the dice is. But
Yeah.
we were speaking about the dice rolling against the leader, which segues into one of my favorite things, dice jail. For those that don't know what dice jail is, it is when you have a particular section in your dice bag, or a separate dice bag, or a separate place for these dice to go, when you have a dice that rolls one too many times against you. Danik, do you have a dice jail, don't you?
Actually, believe it or not, for as much as I do play with dice, I actually don't have a dice jail.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You live on the wild side. You live on the
I
wild
do.
side.
I
Wild
do.
West dice here. Your dice are like so lucky. You just you just let them live.
Well, there's actually probably a more mundane and less interesting explanation, and that's the fact that typically when I do play D&D, more often than not, the type of characters that I play, when I do play, as opposed to DMing, when I do play, I make it a point to try to not put themselves into situations where a single dice roll is a critical factor in determining the success of a larger campaign or actions.
That's very considerate of you as a DM.
Yeah. Well, as a player too, like as a characters, I try not to do those things. So, yeah.
Now, as an example, I have I'm gonna roll a dice. Right. Oh my god, that was bad. That was bad. It rolled into the bag. It rolled into the bag. Oh my god. It's wanting to just go back in the bag. Okay, that's an 8. 16. And a 9. So that was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna pull out. This is my dice jail. It's like a blue bag. I'm gonna pull out one of the terrible dice. Maybe because for those that don't know, dice jail is not permanent. They do get a second chance sometimes. Now the second chance, if they fail again, then they stay in the dice jail for a little longer. This is the one I picked up. It's just like clear dice.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm.
So. And it rolled off the table. I'm not picking that up. I'm gonna do that over again with a different dice. It just wasn't even wanting to, not wanting to go into trial. They're like, nope. I'm just gonna fall off the table. It's our chance to run.
Run away, freedom.
Okay, so 8, 12, and 14. So this dice would save itself, and it would be taken out of the dice shell as per chance.
Nice.
Now, we are going to get into the section that's more of the podcast. It's more opinionated, so to speak.
Sure. Sure.
I know what got me into dice. It was, I think I was playing, I don't remember how long ago it was, but I collected dice pretty young. But I think it was the shiny colors. But I think that really, when I thought about serious collecting, it was when I played a one D&D game, and they're like, you need dice, and I was like, oh, I'll pick some with dice. And they became these shiny rocks, basically.
Nice.
That every time I'm like, oh, this looks cool. This looks cool, which is not necessarily the best way to collect dice. But that's how I got into dice, and that's how I collect my dice.
It's completely valid. It's totally valid.
So, Danik, how did you? Well, I guess we kind of answered that question. But how did what drew you to collecting dice? I guess. And what is it that you look in? What you look for in your dice?
Yeah. So, great question. I am a firm believer that you can never have enough pretty cool dice. So, even purely aesthetics is absolutely 100% valid, I feel, and
I'm glad we agree.
yes, and the times over the years when I've had to restrain myself from picking up a die or a dice set simply because of some kind of, beautiful pattern or something like that is numerous. is numerous. And so for me, what is a criteria for choosing the dice set and when I buy it? And it's changed a bit over the years. For me, as we have moved a lot more online, definitely the usage of in-person die, live die, hard, tactile die has dropped for sure, and it's unfortunate. But there are other things that I've done to try to revive that aspect, which I have waiting in the wings here when we get to it, to alternative uses of dice for gaming. But for me, the criteria now is going to be a lot more of the visual aesthetic. Examples being are these metallic die that I showed briefly, but I have this set here of average size dice, and they are purple.
Those are pretty.
Yeah, it is a purple face with a silver edges, and they're shiny. They're full metal, 100% metal. They have a very nice heft to them, and they just have this very nice feel. And for me, when I picked it up and saw it, I said, that's just going to be nice to have. It is interesting to note that the D4, which is a pyramidal shape, for those of you unfamiliar, this particular set's D4 are extraordinarily sharp, to the point where it is actually too dangerous for me to really to toss around absent-mindedly. But it's going to be some kind of gimmick maybe or aesthetic about it that of something that I don't have is going to be the primary driving factor. And to follow that up, here's another set of metal dice I have, but they're approximately 1/4 the size of each of the die I just showed.
They're like iridescent almost.
They are iridescent die, also full metal, but they are very, for their size, they're quite hefty. I would say they're approximately a half an inch to about a centimeter, just over a centimeter for those using metric units. But yeah, these are very nice and pretty as well. They're sort of like this rainbowy type of thing. So yeah, those will be for me, that's the big thing. And then occasionally I'll run across a die like this, which is a giant D20. It is light, it is resin, but something like this is for those rare times when you just want to roll a die for dramatic effect. And it's really more about the act of rolling a giant die across a table that everybody can see clearly.
I think everyone's had, I think everyone's had that moment playing D&D.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, for me, a lot of it. Now, when I was buying die in the beginning, I would always make sure I bought them as sets. So, looking through my collection here, I would always make sure that it was part of a set. So, I have this large collection of D6 die. They're all the same color, exact same color pattern and everything. And I bought them as a big cube. But over the years, I've been less picky about that and more interested on dice as their individual characters. But
I was gonna say I sometimes will buy sets, but I am random. I've got this like blood red white white D20 that does not match anything else. The
Sure,
closest
sure.
thing that it might match is maybe this D10, but like this is obviously, you can see from the numbers that it's different. So yeah, I'm completely opposite of that. From the get go, I was like, I'm just
Sure.
gonna pick up whatever I want.
Yeah, and there was one of the things that kind of helped me a little bit too. It surprisingly, even though it didn't result in me immediately getting more dice of my own, was there was a little rule in the small circle of friends that I had in university, college, who were playing D&D, and they were the ones that sort of got me back into D&D again, or it's got me into D&D again, I should say, in the first place, in a serious way. And the small little rule that group had was, if you're playing D&D for the first time or joining it, the rule is that the first set of dice you buy, of 7 dice, are always a gift from somebody in the group to the new player.
That's
And
cool.
so, yeah, it was a way of sort of welcoming them to the group of players and to the D&D at large, saying, hey, we want you to feel welcome. And it usually is a very simple set, but I have taken that to heart. And over the years, as I have been more, as I was engaged more in DMing in the community, especially my local game store, I definitely took that to heart, and I would do that occasionally for new players. I would, because it was a gaming store, I would say, hey, if you're interested in this, let's go do this. And either I would, or maybe a couple people would chip in, and we would buy that person a brand new set of 7 die to get them started.
This is really cool. I don't remember this.
Those are cool. That's a nice one.
Yeah. All right. So next on the thing, what are your thoughts on? Because we mentioned because I asked this question because you did mention the metal dice being cool, but being very dangerous.
Yes, they are extraordinarily.
So what are your thoughts on Dice Tower? And for those that are listening that don't know what a Dice Tower is, it's typically a device. It's typically a structure that you throw dice in, and it hits a bunch of random walls, and then to randomize the roll, and then it has a catch, which can be either a basket or it could be a padded area where the dice stop rolling. How do you feel about Dice Towers?
I actually love them, and I actually have 2 that I regularly use. I think I can probably pull them out here, but yes, I use them a lot, and I actually swear by them. I think they're an amazing thing, for sure. And do you have a dice tower to show?
I don't have a dice tower, so I'm on the opposite end.
Sure, go for it.
Because my thing, right, is that it's probably more cleanly, and you don't get your dice lost, and blah blah blah. And it can be a little less dangerous when you have heavier elements. But for me, there's something visceral about this, and I'm going to just show you what I'm talking about. The hand roll, like, it's just because you're getting it, and I know my camera's being weird now. You're getting it into the palm of your hands. It's collecting your aura. I'm a little more superstitious when it comes to that, so I do not use dice towers because I like to have a physical throw. So I am very opposite. So I would love to hear why you swear by them. Actually, could I follow up that question with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I did find one of my backup dice tower because it's actually a very unique, interesting thing. And this is not a primary reason why I swear by them. However, it definitely is one reason why I find Dice Tower to be so fun, I guess. It adds to sort of the fun aspect of it. And this, for those of you who cannot see, this is a wood-etched DM screen. It is something you buy as a kit, and you put it together. It's very difficult to put together because of the small parts, but it's used when DMing, running a D&D campaign or an adventure, and you can put custom screens, custom, different notes and whatnot on it. For those of you who've ever seen something like Critical Role, this is the type of thing that you would see potentially, holding secret notes behind so that players can't see.
Now, I will just interject the original, because some of the screens are pretty simple. They're just literally cardboard pieces. The initial, in regards to dice as well, so that way we'll circle back around. The initial reason that you have a DM screen, this can be in any kind of game with the dice roll, where you're fighting against someone with a dice roll. It's that so that those dice rolls, so that you don't see how many dice that they're rolling or how many other particular factors in regards to the dice themselves that you don't want to share with the group until the proper time. So it's to hide a lot of the actions basically of the DM.
Yeah, and it's also a great way for DM to keep notes too, right? It's like notes about things that they don't necessarily want to make immediately public. But this is an example of the convenience of it because, for those of you that can't see, the back of the screen actually has an integrated dice tower.
As you see there, it's a different number. It'll be a different number, hopefully.
Yeah.
That might not have been the best example on that one, as it way. But yeah, so there you go. It's got a little end stopper area, and then it hits it a bunch of times.
Yeah, and I guess the other reason why I personally like it is, for me, is as much as I agree with you, yes, I also like that tactile sort of experience of shaking dice and throwing it. I actually do like it a lot, and I still do it a lot. I think for me, one of the challenges is that the dice tower helps solve, and I actually did manage to get my dice tower. I have two here that I can show you. One is a very compact one. It's this very compact dice tower here. It's a magnetic one. So it can store one set of dice. It stores one set of dice in it, and then you put it together, and it will then you put it together, and then it turns into a little dice tower that you can roll dice down. Now, for me, the big I like the sound. I'll be honest. I really do like the sound. It is nice, and to me, it's I will be honest. Probably the bigger reason why I like Dice Tower is probably more as I started DMing.
Okay.
That helps, right? That kind of adds context, right? So when I'm DMing, a lot of times you will be doing a lot of rolls, a lot. And it could be just one or two die, it could be 3, 4, 5, it could be a whole bunch. And having something like a dice tower where you can just drop in your dice is really, really, for me, very, very handy and fast. And I'll be honest with you, it really adds to a lot of suspense when the players can't see it as well. There's nothing quite like a dungeon master who is determining the next course of action for your party, and then you can't see it, but all of a sudden you hear this, and it makes people wonder, wait, what just happened? So that's part of it for sure. But for me, I think the fact that it simplifies things for me a lot, and it adds the auditory aspect, I think is. But the big one also, I'll be honest as well, it keeps them from flying off the table.
That is as we saw as the other dice earlier on the podcast just leaped off my table. So
yes,
it prevents from escapees. Yes. All right.
A lot.
All right. So that is Dice Towers. This one's a little bit more thought-provoking, because it questions the entire purpose of dice. Do you think that the randomness and the probability of dice, and that kind of connection? Now, do you think that that's a means to an end? So, for instance, just being like, oh, we want to make somewhat of a random algorithm, but you have like a billion factors that change it, or is it one of the most essential things? So that being like, that being said, that everything can change with the roll of a dice, as the saying goes. I think I will start out with saying what I think. I think that it should definitely always be an essential component. I feel like it's more real in regards to any kind of use of the dice in a game or in D&D or board games, tabletops, or anything like that. Because I feel like one, as I said, it's more real. It's kind of a realism thing when you're playing those type of games. But two, also I don't like there being like advantages where it's like, well, I have a critical 1. For those that don't know, critical 1 means that you completely failed because it's very hard to get a 1, and then critical 20 is that you super succeeded because it's not easy to roll 20. But I don't think that it's fun when someone's like, I've got a critical 1, but I've got like 15 advantages, so it doesn't matter. So that's my thoughts on it. I think that they have to be the essential. It's an essential. Thought of as an essential component.
I agree very strongly that, and it's great that you bring that up because you're actually touching on something that you could probably discuss in a future podcast episode, and that is more specific about the philosophy and of different game design elements, right? Yeah, right. Because
stay tuned for that. Exactly.
Stay tuned. Coming to a podcast provider near you. But I think So I definitely agree with the premise that the core issue that I think you touched on, and that is that for games and things where there should be some sort of modeling of this idea that not everything is predetermined, right? This idea that there is some randomness to whatever it is in the world or what universe, whatever. I agree that having that captured in a way that the player feels like they are somewhat in control of is important, and dice are an excellent way to do that, right? Like they're amazing at this idea of, okay, yes, it's random, but it's a random that I have some measure of control over somehow, right? So it may be I can blame the dice later or something, but the fact is that it's not some whimsical force of nature that is abstract. It's here encapsulated in this randomness in my hand. I think that's very powerful and very, very essential for a lot of games. And it brings to mind a game that I originally bought years ago because I thought it was amazing in terms of its design, but after I got into it, it turns out there's no random elements to the game. Even though it feels random, there actually is no randomness. It is, in that way, it's a lot like chess or checkers, which are great games, but there's no random factor to them, right? All the rules are set out ahead of time, and I think dice are an excellent way to capture that. I think there's other ways to do it as well, but dice are a definitely very popular and very good way of doing it, and any design that incorporates dice or some sort of element that captures that is going to do very well. And that if you're in, and you can tell me if you want to, I can segue into an excellent example of that as well.
I think we'll save that for board game
Sure.
episode, because that goes into game mechanics, not necessarily specifically dice.
Well, this is actually a dice. This is an example of that.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, sure. If it's related to dice.
I won't go into the details of the game per se, but this is an example of just how important do I think that taking that design element of randomness that dice bring is important and can be really, really successfully done well because of the power of dice is a game called Dice Forge. It is literally a game where you are building your own dice. The whole purpose of the game is to build your own die. And so this touches exactly what you're saying, this idea of there's randomness, but here it takes it to the next step where now I'm actually manipulating and changing the rules by changing the die. So I think games like this that take that aspect and then build on it to really are very powerful, and dice are a great way to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That I see what you're talking about. I'd actually love to talk about that Dice Forge game on a board game.
Sure.
Board
Yeah.
game episode. I'll to note that, but
Yeah.
like even building your own dice, even though you build even that aspect of even if they're built dice, they're dice that you forged in the irons of Uthmer, whatever random fantasy city.
Yeah. The seventh layer of
There's still random, right? There's still a possibility that there's failures. Which segues into my other thing that I wanted to point out is that I'm not against advantages. Believe me, I've had D&D characters that had ridiculous charisma buffers and intimidation things, but they're not to be used as a absolute, not absolute, as a deterrent or made to, I don't know what word I'm trying to say, but basically make the options dull. Because, obviously if you're like, well, I have like 1,000,000 points in this, so it doesn't matter what I roll, I automatically pass. I think that advantages, even in non-D&D games, like, so say that you're like, oh, I get another dice, I can roll another dice, because of whatever card I picked up or whatever. I think advantages should be used in a way that they provide confidence to the player to give an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you disagree, then by all means, chime in.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's the fact that even though there is this fickle hand of fate that may determine some things in whatever, the fact is that it's a fickle hand of fate that we are holding, right? It's not this abstract. And the fact that you and your character, has this, you've worked hard to, yes, at the end of the day, there is some sort of randomness there, which is important, but you as a character understand that and work with it, and you're not breaking the rules, you're working the rules to try to make them in your favor. And I think that's very powerful. It really goes a lot to giving players agency and control over their experiences, which is very vital for success. Yeah. Well, for any game, not just D&D, but everything. Yeah.
All right, and I'm gonna ask. We're gonna go towards these final questions.
Sure.
And this is gonna be the collecting aspect as well as opinionated. So, collecting opinions. I've said the title anyway. Sorry.
Ding, 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 ding.
About it. Where do you think? How do you think that people should start collecting dice? Should they do sets? Should they do random? And should they wait till they have a game that require a particular dice, or should they just start collecting? I guess that's kind of the two-parter question.
I think that's a great question. That's a great question, because I think, how should people start collecting die? I would actually argue that the vast majority of people out there actually already have die that they've collected. They just don't realize it because they don't think of it, because, and this is an interesting thing because you've brought up here, is that most of the time people, when their experience with die in a lot of traditional settings, it's just another piece of something else. So take your example, Monopoly, right? Almost everybody has a set of dice in their Monopoly game board at home, but that's technically a dice collection. It's just so tightly integrated with everything else associated with Monopoly that they don't.
That's intriguing. Okay.
Right? So everybody does have a dice collection. It's just whether or not they've decided to take them and pull them out of the various boxes and put them in a bag that's for nice, to show on a view, show other people, show off to other people, is really the difference, I think. So so getting started is, I guess, in a sense, you've already started. So the next question is, well, okay, so you do have these dice. So how do you break that idea and start dealing with dice as their own thing? And I think that's a great question. And you're right. I think, to me, probably the easiest way to get something like that started is to just, I'm all about aesthetics. I think it's pretty, I think there are some dice out there that are genuinely works of art in their own right. And I think that's totally valid, That would be a great way to do it. As to where they should do it, I think supporting your local game stores is a great idea. But with
collecting opinions always supports that always supporting local businesses. By the way, you should always do that because they are the backbone, so to speak, of keeping these hobbies and collecting alive.
Yeah, for sure, that 100% there. So I would definitely, start there with any types of options that they have. Now, of course, not all of them have a lot of options, but that's a great place to start. And yeah, I mean, I think for those interested in dice, if people are taking dice and extending it and digging into dice from angles that people find they're personally interesting, I think is also a great way. One of the things that I think some people might find interesting is for those who are big fans of, let's say, Japanese anime, there are a lot of anime out there that actually showcase some traditional Japanese dice games. Maybe they aren't the mainstay, but it's one of those things where, hey, these games, they're actually real. You might want to check them out. And sort of people who are interested in that kind of historical or maybe cultural aspect, and then they find out that, oh yeah, I mean, weighted dice in Japan in those areas, those were a big deal because of the cultural aspect, and just sort of digging into that, and whatever the angle that people find interesting, I think is going to be the best way to expand their collection. For me, it was D&D, but for other people, it's works of art. Other people, it's history. I think it's great. Because if you dig, you will find a connection to dice. I guarantee you.
It's interesting, and it's interesting that way that you started that out by saying that dice, everyone has a dice collection in theory, right? So I was like, they didn't even think about that, but yeah. So I mean, it's like coins, right? Like, I'm not going to go into that because this is not a coin episode. This is a dice episode. But coins are kind of the same in that same vein. Is that if you want to start collecting, you kind of already have. So I think that's really cool. To me, I honestly think that I agree with Danik. If you want to collect it for the aesthetics or the history or just the game things, I definitely say that you should get into them. Now, how you should collect them, I'm a little bit different.
Sure.
I would say yes, go to like your local, that stuff that we're talking about. But and that's maybe just because I have weird things that I like. I'm connections, right? I say start out with sets if you want. That's perfectly fine because you want to have a full set. But if you have like couple sets, now you're like, okay, cool, I've got a couple sets. Like I've got a couple sets, but pulling them from those grab bag random boxes, bundles, whatever you want to call them.
Totally.
Where you can tactilely touch them and roll them. Just roll them. Because sometimes the dice speak to you. And for instance, that's why I ended up with this one. Because I was like, oh, that looks interesting. But it rolled really, really nice.
Nice.
So, and I was like, well, this is a winner, clearly. And so I picked it from the pile. So that's how I think. That's where I'll differ in my response. Is that I feel like that you should kind of have a tactile feel before test drive them, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And like I said, for me, the physical aspect of them are amazing, to the point where it's interesting you mentioned this is not a coin episode. However, I am waiting, it should be here very soon, on a set of coin dice. They're called flip dice, and it is a full set of 7 dice, but they are coins that you flip. It is scheduled to be delivered. It's fully funded and everything, so I'll be getting our Kickstarters set this coming soon, I think the next month here. And the designs and everything they look amazing because they're full metal. But it is dice, but they're coins. So it's interesting you mentioned that. But so the physical aspect I agree, is very powerful. I would like to point out for other people too as well, who are maybe a little confused by this, that there are plenty of other games that are not D&D that maybe your friends or family might be involved in that you didn't realize are heavy on dice, and one of them is Warhammer 40k.
Yes.
But that is different because those are all D6s, right? As opposed to they don't use any other dice. But yeah, that's a different sort of gaming mechanic. But yeah, dice are everywhere. Most people probably don't realize it. So.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode because I do plan on potentially having a couple more dice episodes in the future with other things. Because I think a lot of these collecting things, there's more that you can talk about in a particular, with particular other opinions. So I feel like those could be broken down. But with that, I will say thank you, Danik Rose, for being here and being my recurring not something in between recurring and guest, but co-hosting, so to speak.
Occasional member, I guess, right?
Yeah. Cameo co-host.
There you go.
Is there anything you wanted to say? A final thing you wanted to say about dice collecting to the fans or to the audience rather?
Yeah. I would say definitely, if something about dice has always intrigued you or even just remotely been interesting to you, definitely take the time to go and talk to somebody or a local game store. They will be more than happy to help you. It might seem weird if you don't really have a good context for it. And with that, your local game stores will definitely be able to give you good ideas on where to get started in playing games and expanding any kind of collection, whether it be dice or otherwise. So
it's great. It's great. I think my last thing I'm going to say about dice as well is that sometimes the dice can be more than just dice, and I'm not gonna try to get too philosophical, but this, for instance, dice is kind of the earliest fidget toy. Because you can roll them around, you can do this, you can roll them on the table as a thing. So they have a little more utility than just what they were made for. And I think that they're, like I said, what Danik was saying, they're works of art, and they're worth collecting. So if you really wanted to get into something small, or you wanted to have a little bit of, something that you can feel a connection to while collecting, and just maybe you like just rolling things, dice is a great way to do all of those. All right, so with that being said, we have the last final segment, and that is shameless plugs. Is there anything you wanted to plug? Oh wait, there is one thing I want to plug on this particular episode, and that is you had an anniversary, didn't you, Danik Rose?
Yes. Oh no, that was last week. It was a good time. I got a chance to actually see a movie in a movie theater for the first time in a long time. So that was great.
So congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you.
But as I was saying though, in regards to why I said that, was there anything you want to plug, or anything as far as like events or anything like that? Feel free. Also keep in mind this is not going to be published today, but it might be published a week from now. So.
Sure. No, I don't really have anything major. I would just say, for those of you listening, give Omni a definite, give them, if you're not, subscribed, go ahead and do that. There's lots of other ways to support and things. I am around in various places on the internet. I'm sure if you do look, you might find my name show up somewhere. But other than that, no, I don't have anything specific.
I'm gonna make it a rule from this. I'm gonna think about making it a rule from this point forward. No one can plug me.
Well,
we did that on episode 2. I was like, oh my god, I need to make this a rule. This is getting ridiculous.
Well, if you don't plug yourself, someone else is gonna plug you.
That's true. But yeah, so Danik Rose can be found on Twitch.
Yep.
And Twitter. Or
yep.
X, Twitter. No one's calling it X anymore. And it's Danik Rose on either one of those. You can find me, Omni Bear, on pretty much almost anything except for Instagram, because there was a stupid hack. That is going to be real Omni Bear if you want to find me on Instagram. But I'm sure if you search Omni, you'll still find me. But yeah, that is a wrap then. I don't know when this episode will be up. It should be up soon. It'd be early September. And I hope you enjoy when you're listening. I hope this gives you purpose, or gives you something to do, or gives you joy, or was educational for you. And just to close it off, always remember, you are worthy, you are loved, you belong, and you can do wonderful things. Keep your star shining, and we'll look for you forever in the night sky. Alright, and I am going to cut now.